Welcome everyone to the first episode of Local Beats this year and this semester. I'm your host, Catey Nelson.
And I'm your co-host, Naomi Hilmer. If you're new to Local Beats, this is a show where we dive into different topics immersed in music culture, as well as highlighting local artists, musicians, and stories around CSU and Fort Collins.
We've got a packed show for you tonight, starting off with a student here at CSU, Jake Griffle, who has recently begun making his own podcast series. In his podcast, Jake gives his listeners a deeper look at the songs we all know and love, and the hidden meanings in their lyrics you may have never noticed before.
What happens when you look hard enough into the setting sun? Are you finally satisfied? As heads as tails, maybe the answers are reserved for a well-distinguished gentleman. This is the music of the Rolling Stones.
My name is Jake Griffle. I'm a third-year student here at CSU. My podcast name is the Anthem Jam Podcast. I named it that because, anthem, a song that we all love to rock out to, or maybe it's your own personal anthem. Then jam, because, we're jamming out to it. It's ultimately, it's lighthearted. So I've always been a big music fan. I started playing guitar when I was like 15 and just started finding all these cool bands that I got really into, and I just loved how creative their guitar was. And then that kind of led me to start listening to whole albums all the way through, and just realized the kind of care and intentionality that artists put behind crafting an album, and my mind was blown. And so I wanted to kind of share that with everyone that I could.
I think a lot of music reviewers in general are trying to be super objective about it, and I think it takes away from the empathetic nature of music.
The most difficult part about getting things started is just literally the launching off point. It originally started out as I wanted to commentate through a whole album, but then I was like, I wouldn't listen to that. And so the hard part after that was really narrowing down the idea. In each episode, I'll be walking you through my top 3 song picks for a musical artist, album, genre, or whatever it may be.
I really like that his show is only 10 minutes long because, my mom is completely obsessed with podcasts, and she'll send me 2 of them a day, and I'm like, Mom, there's no way I have time for this.
They put a lot of intentionality into the writing.
When I first started listening to it, I was immediately impressed by the production value. I can just tell that he does take his time making sure everything sounds the way that it's supposed to, and I liked really just the whole format of the show.
I really dive as deep as I possibly can in as many aspects. It's not limited to the history of the song, not limited to the lyrics or even the composition. So it's really holistic in that sense. And a lot of other podcasts that are music commentary only focus on one of those. I think the big thing is I really want this to be an easy listening thing. I like to go through topics that have some self-reflection so that people can kind of process and think through that. But then at the same time, it's not like a grueling therapy session or something.
I like the sort of interactive nature to it because he'll talk about a song, he'll give a little introduction, and then he'll pause, he'll say, hey, go listen to this song, and then we'll talk more about it.
And then have a very small break.
I really like that structure because I think it makes you more engaged. You get to come fresh off of hearing this song, and you have that little introduction, like a little primer, and then you get to hear the story of the song and why he likes it.
I think the thing I love about podcasting is it's the most immersive medium, I guess you could say. With the book, you still have to be an active participant. You still have to be, cognitively thinking about the words on the page and turning them into thought. With podcasting, you can just sit down and just let the words wash over you. So it's not like a strenuous activity. It just kind of flows naturally, like you're talking to a friend.
Something I loved about watching that video was how he makes his podcast. When we were filming it, he just is so easy to glide in between, recording and then his script. And one of the best things about his podcast, I think, because I love podcasts too, but it's so short. You don't have to go on an hour-long car ride to listen to it. You can listen to it on your way to class.
I love a short podcast. That is really nice.
Yeah, I know. There's something about podcasts where it's just I almost like it more than music sometimes.
Me too.
Because it's informative. It's nice. It's nice to listen to someone talk about something that you don't know about. And he's super knowledgeable about everything music. So it was super interesting to meet him.
That was really cool.
Yeah.
If you're interested in listening to Jake's podcasts. You can find them on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Music. Stay tuned after the break because we went to the plaza to find out what songs best represented our fellow Rams this Valentine's Day.
Listen, you're my friend.
I noticed you haven't really been yourself recently.
Yeah, I feel like something's up.
How are you?
Are you okay?
Is there anything you want to talk about?
I just want to know how you're feeling.
And listen, even if you don't know what to say, I'm here to talk.
No matter what you're going through,
I just want you to know I'm here.
I've got your back.
when you want to talk, I'm here.
Welcome back from the break, Rams. As we all know, Valentine's Day was this past weekend. As a beautiful holiday for some and a dreaded holiday for others, I went to the plaza to ask students what the best song described their experience this past Valentine's Day.
If you could use one song to describe your Valentine's Day from this weekend, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. Banana Pancakes by Jack Johnson.
I love that song.
Make a banana pancakes, pretend like it's the weekend night.
Okay, so
that
why?
song makes me happy. I don't know, it just reminds me of like sitting inside, not doing anything, but you're still cozy, you're still happy, even though you don't really get to go out, but it was still a good Valentine's Day.
Time of Our Lives by Pitbull. Because my Valentine's Day was pretty fun, and it's just all about having the time of your life.
I think the romantic song would be the City of Stars.
Yeah,
City of Stars.
Oh, okay,
Yes.
from La La Land?
Yeah.
I love that song.
Yeah.
Kerosene by Miranda Lambert. Mostly about hating men and just kind of being done with relationships, if I'm being honest.
Favorite t-shirt? It's just essentially about like hanging out with your significant other, just chilling.
Just quality time?
Yeah.
Nice.
Sexual Healing by Marvin Gaye.
Song that would come in my head just because I was listening to it recently was it would be Sex and Candy by Justin Timberlake. Yeah, I just actually, Valentine's Day has just always been my favorite holiday.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, it's not just like a relationship thing, it's like a friends and family thing for me too.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So, like, I always just kind of like it, and I always, like, I send my grandparents and my dad a card in the mail.
That's adorable.
So,
it is, it's about the love of relationships instead of just love of your,
and sending all of the people you care about, like, a little, like, reminder that you're thinking of them, that you love them.
You could name one song that described your Valentine's Day this past weekend. What would it be?
I would say My Bloody Valentine. It's like bittersweet, and I just heard it the other day and I was like, oh my gosh, like I didn't have a Valentine, but it was still like okay, and it was just, I don't know, it's just a really good song. So.
Rush by Taylor Swift, just kind of that moment of being like, hey, that guy's cute, but everyone likes him, so it's kind of like never gonna happen. So it's kind of like, cool, all right, that's kind of life. So.
It's Hannah James, At Last. Okay. At last. Love is come and gone.
Believer, Image Dragons.
Love that song. Nice. So why do you say that one?
Because I like the music which it has. Cool. And maybe I and my girlfriend were listening to the first English song back there in India.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, that's really cool. Question for you is, if you could describe your Valentine's Day in one song, what would that song be?
Oh, boy. Valentine's Day, one song. Unchained Medley. Unchained Medley by the Righteous Brothers.
Love that song. Okay, so why that song?
Well, I think it was just really cool the way they made it famous in the movie Ghost.
Wait for me, I'll be coming home.
Patrick Swayze and the love he has for his wife. Even though he's dead, he manages to find a way to come back and express that love for her.
If you could have one song that described Valentine's Day this weekend, what would that song be?
Oh man. Interesting question. I'm not pulling any kind of song up in my head at the moment. So, songless. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
One thing I loved about going out on the plaza was hearing the just insane variety of answers.
Yeah.
There was some that people knew on the spot. They're like, oh, this. And then others are like the guy in the last clip, Clayton, he was just like, nothing, songless. And I kind of get that. Like, it was a little bit of a hard question, but if I asked that to you, like, what song best described your Valentine's Day, what would it be?
Well, if you were to ask me, I would probably have to say Loving is Easy by Rex Orange County. It's a little sappy, but...
That is adorable. That's the best way to be.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What about you? What would be your Valentine's Day song?
I'd have to say Tennessee Whiskey, because I had some whiskey on Valentine's Day.
That's perfect.
Yeah, it was nice. Shared a nice little glass. I'm not a huge fan of it, but I like it with ice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, don't go anywhere, Rams, because after the break, we're going to take a deeper look into Spotify's newly released and obnoxiously massive list of genres and how it inspired us to take a new spin on what comes next.
Later on in the show, we'll sit down with a local band from Fort Collins, Los Toms, and get to watch the first airing of new music video Ziggurat. Stick around, more stories from local beats are coming up next.
Dad?
Just 1 minute, okay?
Hey, Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Do clouds take naps?
I couldn't tell you.
Can birds draw pictures?
I don't have an answer for that.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look!
Welcome back from the break, Rams. For all my Spotify users out there, you probably know about the tradition Spotify has in creating personalized slideshows and playlists for each of their users at the end of each year, in which they title Spotify Wrapped. The slideshow consists of top songs, artists, albums, and genres, as well as how many total minutes you've listened to over the course of the year. It's a fun way to reflect on how your music habits and tastes evolve over 12 months. One thing I noticed about my Spotify Wrapped for 2020 was that they said I listened to over 537 genres last year, which initially kind of blew my mind. I didn't even know there were more than 100 genres, much less 500. Turns out there are more than 1,387 different genres discovered on Spotify.
As part of a new segment here on Local Beats, we dive into the stories behind different genres, where they began, what they mean, and what influence they have on the kind of music we hear and listen to today. Welcome to the Genre of the Month.
What is up, guys? My name is Catey Nelson, and welcome to the first segment ever of Genre of the Month. On this lovely cold month of February, I have chosen to talk to you guys about the genre of psychedelic rock, also known as psychedelia. The genre was first coined around 1965, and it's defined as a diverse style of rock music, heavily inspired, influenced, and representative of the psychedelic culture surrounding psychedelics. Believe it or not. The emergence of this genre was highly credited to the development of the new youth counterculture rising in America. A very jaded, politically opinionated youth that was frustrated with the Vietnam War, frustrated with consumer capitalism, but also fueled by the introduction of psychedelics into the uncontrolled American market. There's a few theories on where exactly psychedelic rock originated. First one is in 1960 with Ken Kesey, who you may recognize the name of as the author of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And although he is a very famous author for his fiction novels, he has a lot of multitudes in what he chooses to write about. In his later life, he started kind of trending away from fiction novels and more towards other things. Back in 1960, in the town of Haight-Ashbury in San Francisco Bay Area in California, Ken Kesey first experienced mind-altering drugs when he volunteered as a test subject for an experiment conducted by the Army. After this experiment, he stole some of the LSD from the testing site, brought it back home, and showed it to his friends. Now, this group of friends, along with Kesey, later became a group called the Merry Pranksters. And the Merry Pranksters kind of had a reputation as the years went by from 1960 to 1965 of holding these things called acid parties. More specifically, the Kool-Aid acid test parties. Now, these were parties that were massively stimulating. Lots of big strobe lights, lots of big crowds, lots of acid. But one thing that stayed consistent throughout the whole time was Ken Kesey's choice of music, and that was the Grateful Dead. Fun fact about the Grateful Dead was that they actually coined their band name, the Grateful Dead, at one of these parties, after they initially lost their first name, the Warlocks. Anyway, moving on. At these parties, Ken Kesey would hand out cups of Kool-Aid laced with LSD. When he handed them to members at the party, what he would say is, just try not to freak out. Now, to put this in perspective, back in this time, people didn't even know what LSD was. It wasn't even outlawed yet. The government wasn't really sure about it. They didn't really realize that it was becoming an entire movement. And so if you were in one of these parties and you got handed a cup of Kool-Aid and being told by one of the most famous authors of the time, just try not to freak out, what would you do? I don't know, but a lot of people at these parties said yes. 60s were a wild time, let me tell you. Also occurring around the same time was the emergence of the band the 13th Floor Elevators, who came out of Austin, Texas. 1 year after their emergence, they released the album The Psychedelic Sounds of the 13th Floor Elevators. Now, the art cover, the key tones and the instruments, and especially the lyrics, inexorably advocate for the use of LSD in expanding one's mind and freeing one's soul, as the 13th Floor Elevator Band put it. Lyrics such as liquid distant castles and living on Monkey Island incite the out-of-body, kind of distorting feeling that comes when you're on psychedelics. Now, the member of the 13th Floor Elevators were heavily credited in coining the term psychedelic rock, specifically the vocalist and guitarist Rocky Erickson, who is now known as the grandfather of psychedelic rock. So it is between Ken Kesey or Rocky Erickson between who really is the founder of this genre. It wasn't too long after that psychedelia had spread from Austin and the San Francisco Bay Area throughout the country and pretty soon into other countries such as Europe and Canada. Now, all the way across the pond, we have bands like the Beatles, who took on the psychedelic genre with a less aggressive, more surreal, minimalistic approach to their American counterparts. Flash forward one more year to August 1966 in Britain. The Beatles had just come out with a game changer of an album called Revolver. Now, one of the songs on the album was really inspired by John Lennon's psychedelic Curiosity. He told his composer, "I want to sound like the Dalai Lama singing from the highest mountaintop," which was pretty inspiring for his producer, and they came up with the most distinguished song on the album, Tomorrow Never Knows. Now, this is best described not by my words, but as by a music journalist and critic, so I'm going to use his description. Oregano Rathbone, he describes the song as an otherworldly declamation sat atop a forbidding edifice of super compressed drums, chirruping tape loops written on separate faders to form the track's hallucinatory sound collage. Now, flash forward one more year to 1967, Pink Floyd also hops on the wagon. Syd Barrett, the lead singer and composer of Pink Floyd at the time, excitedly pursued psychedelic rock through his musical experimentation in the first album, The Piper at the Gates of Dawn. With its wide range of hypnotic and intriguing songs that consist both of psychedelic pop and drawn-out psychedelic instruments, the album became an instant classic of the psychedelic era. As LSD became a more and more prevalent influence in the younger, politically jaded generations of America's counterculture, it became clear that it would have a lasting impact on the shape of the nation's next wave of music. John Coltrane of the Byrds said it best, "Psychedelic music will color the whole popular music scene." Psychedelic music, whether we realize it or not, is a pillar in a lot of the rock classics we still listen to today. Established artists like Jimi Hendrix, the Beatles, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, the Doors, the Byrds, and even the Beach Boys. The Beach Boys. They all began introducing elements of psychedelic rock into their music. As Woodstock undoubtedly was to those who were there, it was also the turning point for the psychedelic genre. Against the height of the youth counterculture, it all inevitably came crashing down. Artists that the youth had grown to love, such as Syd Barrett from Pink Floyd, they began having psychological breakdowns, probably from a combination of fame and their heavy abuse of psychedelics. The many deaths of the greats that had curated the psychedelic rock genre also came the death of the genre's mainstream popularity. Psychedelic rock still lives on today, it's just retreated a bit more into the more alternative side of music. For the majorities of the 70s, 80s, and 90s, psychedelic rock was almost tucked away in its own subculture coined neo-psychedelia. It wasn't until the early 2000s that psychedelic rock really started coming out of the underground again, through the development of subgenres like acid house and trance music, where key elements of psychedelic rock were mixed with electronica and pop. Bands such as the Animal Collective, Tame Impala, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, and MGMT are all great examples of bands that are still touched by the influence of the 60s. Bands play a part in what makes the music so legendary, but really, it's the listeners. It's the people that can really feel and understand the seismic sway that music in general, but psychedelic rock can have on your psyche, on your mind and body and soul, even without the use of, psychedelic drugs. That's what makes music worth listening to.
Wow, Catey, that was a great talk about psychedelic rock.
Thank you. Thanks.
What's your favorite psychedelic rock song so far that you've listened to?
Honestly, that's a good question. I really like Tame Impala. Honestly, I'm a fan of like the newer kind of like electronica, psychedelic rock. I do like the old classics. Jimi Hendrix. Do you know The Wind Cries Mary? Have you heard that song?
I've never heard that.
That one was a classic for me in high school. But The Less I Know the Better by Tame Impala has always been one of my favorites. How about you? Do you know the genre very well?
I would have to also say probably Tame Impala. I didn't know until now that they're mostly influenced by psychedelic rock.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah, it turns out like a ton of bands I know are like they have influences of psychedelic rock, and it's just everywhere when you think about it. It's crazy.
Well, just don't go away yet, Rams, because we saved the best for last. After the break, we'll have a special feature on the local psychedelic band Los Toms, as well as the first look at their brand new music video, Ziggurat. You don't want to miss it.
It takes less than 1 minute to find out if you may have prediabetes. You can do it here. But you probably won't. You're busy. Kids, work, show coming back in 48 seconds. So let's do this now. Hold up one finger if you're a man, women, 0. 3 more fingers if you're over 60, 2 over 50, 1 over 40. If you're not sure, keep in mind you're sitting on a couch right now, so 1 more finger if you're not very active. 1 finger if yes, 0 if no. 1 yes, 0 no. Next, find the body type that looks most like you and hold up that many fingers while I look around awkwardly. And that's it. If you're holding up 5 fingers or more, you probably have prediabetes. Sorry to be so blunt, but hey, you're busy. Just go to the site.
Thank you for joining us in the last bit of our show. Now we'd like to introduce you to the local Fort Collins band, Los Toms. Unfortunately, due to COVID-19 restrictions, we weren't able to have the guys from the band in the studio with us today. But Catey was able to sit down with them last week under COVID-safe restrictions and talk to them about what it means to play as psychedelic rock, as well as what it's like to be a local band adapting to the limitations of a pandemic.
Before we do that, though, we thought it'd be fun for y'all to see this band in action. Earlier last week, I had the pleasure of filming a music video for Los Toms, along with the help of a friend and coworker here at CTV, Claire Green. As a little taste of the variety of music that comes out of local artists and bands, here is Los Toms' Ziggurat. Here in the studio, we have two out of the four members of Los Toms, Gerald Tykrow and Nate Dorlack. Thanks for coming in today, guys. How are you guys doing?
Doing good.
Pretty
Nice.
good. Thanks for having us.
So I wanted to bring you guys in, not only because of the music video, but because of the theme of this month's show, psychedelic rock. I can talk as much as I want about the genre, but you don't get the same perspective on it as the artist. So you guys identify with playing psychedelic rock. How did you get into it? Like, what drew you to play that kind of music?
For me, it was just like early bands that we got into. Gerald and I used to work together in a kitchen like a long time ago, and we started listening to some like more recent bands like King Gizzard, the OCs, and things like that to like keep our momentum up while working. And
nice.
It's just really good music, and I think grinding and listening to it for day on end, we like wanted to play it.
Mm-hmm.
And also in the beginning when we first started playing, I don't think we really knew exactly what kind of music we wanted to play. And psychedelic rock kind of encompasses a bunch of different genres really all in one. So it kind of worked out for us because, you know, we weren't quite exactly what we wanted to sound like yet. So it's like...
Apologies for cutting that short, guys. We ran out of time today, but if you want to look at the interview or the music video, feel free to check out CTV Channel 11 on YouTube.
And thanks again to coming to our first local beach show of this semester. I'm Naomi Hilmer.
And I'm Catey Nelson. Tune in tomorrow to get all the news you need in heading into the weekend. Stay safe and have a great night, Rams.